Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sake Revolution. This is America's first sake podcast, and I'm your host, John Puma from the Sake Notes, also the administrator over at the Internet Sake Discord, and the lead mod at Reddit's r/sake community.
And I'm your host, Timothy Sullivan. I'm a sake samurai, sake educator, and the founder of the Urban Sake website. And every week, John and I will be here tasting and chatting about all things sake, and doing our best to make it fun and easy to understand.
Tim, how are you? What have you been up to? Anything interesting? The seasons are starting to change. I don't know if that means anything to you.
Yeah, I just had a trip to D.C. And I saw some of the beautiful cherry blossoms they have there. Have you ever seen the cherry blossoms in D.C.? It is unbelievable.
I have not. My only real run-ins with cherry blossoms, so we do have some in Queens, believe it or not, at Flushing Meadows Park, which is very near to my home. They have cherry blossom trees there, and I have gotten to see them. I saw them actually during the pandemic was when I went to go see those, because that nothing like that to get you to go and look at nature. And I also happened to be in Tokyo once, kind of not when they were in full bloom, when they were kind of starting to bloom many years ago. And it was very nice.
They are beautiful, and I think everyone knows that cherry blossoms are associated with Japanese culture. But did you know that there's a connection between sake and cherry blossoms too?
I've had a lot of sake that has cherry blossom references in the name and on the label, but beyond that, not really. Tell me about this.
Well, there's a cultural phenomena in Japan called Hanami. Hanami, which basically means cherry blossom viewing. Okay. And we should talk first about the cultural meaning of cherry blossoms in Japan.
All right. Yeah. Tell me all about. I'm ready to learn. I want to know about cherry blossoms in Japan. I know it's a thing, but I don't know why it's a thing, and I don't know how big a thing it is.
Yeah, it's a humongous thing. It is. First of all, there are calendars online every year that let you know when the cherry blossom blooms are going to peak throughout the country. So wherever you're living, you can check this calendar. They're all over online, and you can see when the cherry blossoms are going to bloom. Now, the importance of cherry blossoms kind of tie back to a sense of beauty, but impermanence in Japanese culture. Like, the cherry blossoms are some of the most stunning visuals you can get in nature, but they're very fragile and they don't last for a long time. So you have to appreciate the beauty while it's there. Stop and take notice and enjoy and soak in the beauty, but be aware of the impermanence and the fleetingness of that beauty too. In a few weeks, they will be gone and there's no recapturing it. So it's a bittersweet sentiment, and it is very central to Japanese culture, I think.
Wow. All right.
So what do you think of that? Is that too sad?
No, it's not too sad. There's a little bit of melancholy there. I'm not going to lie to you, Tim. But I think that's important. I think you described it, to my mind, I think you described it really well to the best of my understanding of what it means and where it fits in Japanese culture. It is really, I've seen a lot of video, I've seen photos. It's stunning to look at when you're seeing, it's practically snowing. Sakura leaves when it's happening. When it's at full bloom, and there's not a lot else like it. It's really something to see. Now, you mentioned the viewing parties. Have you had the pleasure of attending one?
I have. When I lived in Japan for a year, I got to experience the whole, like a 3-week period of cherry blossom mania. Oh, wow. And when the blooms start to come out, everyone gets very excited. When they hit their peak, when the trees are all blooming and glorious and just exploding with blossoms, people do organize, friend groups organize Hanami parties where you'll actually go out and you'll picnic under the trees. spend time watching the blossoms, being together, enjoying it's outrageous beauty of these trees. It's like unbelievable when there's a whole grove of them and you're gathered together with friends. And I lived more out in the countryside, so it was not crowded. And I think in Tokyo, there's certain areas where you're just like jammed up with all these people and it's not as enjoyable. But out in the countryside, you can find a grove of cherry trees and picnic underneath them. And you mentioned the petals falling, and I've heard it's very good luck if you have your sake cup and a petal falls into your cup while you're sipping your sake.
Well, I mean, it's bad luck for that particular sip, but perhaps it is good luck in a more meaningful way. I've had friends who I've heard their stories of when they want to get like a big group of people together to have one of these parties, they've got to send somebody to the park super early. And like reserve the spot because those go quickly and they're not exactly, you can't exactly flag and reserve it without, you can't just go online and pick a spot under one of the trees. No. That's not how it works.
Yeah. In the big city, there's a lot of competition for the prime picnicking areas for Hanami. And like I said, out in the country, it's a little more chill.
Yeah.
But I will tell you the bittersweet side of my story. I was, living in Niigata. The cherry blossoms started to bloom, and I had a wonderful Hanami picnic with some friends. I got some amazing 4K video of these blossoms trying to, again, capture the impossible to capture beauty. And, a few days went by, and you kind of get used to the gloriousness of it driving around the countryside. And then one day I went to work, and I came out of work for my lunch hour, and there had been a rainstorm.
Oh.
And the car I had, what looked like it was covered in polka dots because all the blossoms had been hit by the water. They were nearing the end of this 3-week cycle. And the car was bespeckled with all the petals, and the tree was kind of stripped. And it was the moment of impermanence. It was the moment of goodbye to the beauty. And I remember I took out my phone and just took a picture of the car and was like, this is it. This is the other side of that outrageous beauty. And it was a very interesting moment. I'd heard about Hanami and cherry blossom viewing and the meaning of it in Japanese culture. And then I got to experience the whole cycle as a first timer, like seeing it all for the first time and living with it. And it was really, really amazing. So I feel like I got the full circle experience.
That's great.
For sure.
Yes, it is fleeting and it's gone. But don't forget, it's also part of a cycle of rebirth as well. So it's not forever. They'll be back next year. And I think that's always important to remember because I've never been to one. And I just keep telling myself I'll go next time.
Okay, Simba, it's the circle of life. We got it.
It's the circle of life. Exactly. Yes.
Now, in modern Japanese culture, I think that the idea of sakura has been, or the idea of cherry blossom has been marketed way too much, don't you think? Like there's sakura lattes at Starbucks.
There are sakura lattes. Everything is pink for the entirety of spring in Japan. It's very, one might say overdone, but it's definitely they've taken it and they've run with it. That's what I'm gonna say.
Yes. I think the key point from a sake point of view is that it is a time to come together, sake drinking under the cherry blossoms, hoping to get a petal to fall into your cup is a cultural touchstone in Japan. I think it's a real activity. There's other types of viewing while drinking sake too. There's moon viewing.
Ooh.
There's snow viewing. And there's this cherry blossom viewing. So
snow viewing. Hold on a second. Hold the phone. That sounds like fun to me. I can get in for some snow viewing.
Yeah, that's called yukimi. Yukimi sake. So literally snow viewing. Snow viewing. Yes. And tsukimi is moon viewing. So if you have a beautiful full moon, you can sit on your back porch or sit outside and watch the moon reflect in your cup of sake, and it's very beautiful and poetic. But cherry blossom viewing is probably the most famous sake drinking activity in Japan, I'd say.
Oh, nice. Yeah, one of these days I need to do it. So it's going to be on my Japan bucket list. Is to have some sake under the trees and aim my cup at the leaves coming down so I can get the luck. That's how luck works, right? You you fake it.
Well, you can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket. That's
there you
what I
go.
say.
That's exactly it. Yes. Actually, I think we have a mutual friend their first sake experience was at one of these parties.
Oh my God. Who's the lucky rascal?
Actually, listener and patron Mark Hunter.
Oh, wow. Yeah, first sake experience was under the cherry blossoms.
Under the cherry blossoms. Yeah, his first sake experience was that. That seems like a really great way to get introduced to sake. So for these sorts of parties, are they bringing like a lot of sake? Or is everybody bringing a bottle? Like, how does this usually go?
Well, I think alcohol is kind of the main point. So people of drinking age who are on the younger side probably have beer or chuhai or some other thing. And the most traditional thing to drink is sake. Sake consumption, as we've said on the show many times, is going down in Japan, especially with younger people. But it is really traditional, and you do see people enjoying sake. It could be something like 1 cups, or it could be a more elegant premium or super premium sake. It's up to everybody's individual enjoyment, but there's usually bento boxes, sakura mochi sweets. So there's sakura-themed desserts and sweets that you can buy in Japan, and you often see those. I've seen people wear rose-colored glasses doing Hanami viewing as well.
Yeah.
It's a very festive, fun picnic atmosphere. And in Japan, there's no prohibition on drinking in public. So you can enjoy sake or your other alcoholic beverage in the park. And in general, people are pretty respectful of each other, and Japanese culture is pretty respectful of other people's space. So it doesn't get too rowdy, I don't think. But for the most part, it's just a really fun way to get together and celebrate spring and that beauty of the cherry blossoms.
I did mention at the front of the show that I had seen the cherry blossoms here in Queens, but as you pointed out there, can't drink under those, not legally. If I were to do that and I got caught, I'd be in some trouble, because unfortunately we have some really strict laws in the U.S. about public drinking. Don't get me wrong, they're there for a really good reason, but unfortunately it means that our viewing parties are a little bit more restrained.
Well, I wouldn't know anything about this personally for myself, but I would never, ever recommend that people put sake into an Evian bottle and bring that to a park in the U.S. That would not be something I would ever do.
Okay, and that would be you'd go so far as to say that's a bad idea.
I would say it's a bad idea. Definitely don't do it. It's not recommended.
All right,
but it is notable that sake and water do have the same color in most cases. Just saying.
All right, good to know. Good to know. These are excellent observations that you're bringing to the show, Tim. I really appreciate it.
do with that what you will.
I think I just might. Unfortunately, with the Evian bottle, it's a lot harder to get the petals to land in your drink, though. The difficulty level skyrockets when the opening is so small.
Well, we all have trade-offs to make.
Yes, it's true. A small price to pay for having some sake at your Sakura viewing party here in New York. So, speaking of sake, and this being Sake Revolution, we're not just talking about what it is like to drink sake under the trees. We are also going to be sipping on some sake ourselves, because that's what we do around here. So, today we have a sake from one of my favorite places in Japan to visit, Hiroshima. And this is called Ryusei Ryofu. And this is from a brewing company called Fuji Brewing Company. And this is a Junmai Ginjo Nama Kimoto. And that I think that sounds really interesting. I've seen Ryusei sake a little bit here in New York, a little bit in Japan here and there. They have a reputation for being a little bit on the dry side, but more recently we've been seeing a lot more Kimoto from them. And I think that they've leaned into that as kind of more of a house style over the last couple of years. I think that's interesting. Also interesting that this is a Nama, so I'm excited to see what happens with this. I'm going to run down the stats real fast. As I mentioned, we're dealing with a Kimoto Nama Junmai Ginjo. The rice variety here is Yamara Nishiki. It is milled down to 60% of its original size. The sake meter value, that measure of dry to sweet, is +6. So that reputation that they have for being a little on the dry side, it's here. Now, having said that, this is, again, a Kimoto, and so we're seeing acidity, and we're seeing acidity at 2, which is relatively high, I think. And then the alcohol percentage is 15.5%. So a nice amount to be sitting under the trees with, don't you think, Tim?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Excellent. By the way, this bottle and this label are very nice. I like what they did here. So the bottle is slightly tinted a very light blue, and then the label, it looks to be very similar in color to the bottle itself, right?
Mm-hmm. So the background of the label is a light blue, picking up on the glass color of the bottle. Mm-hmm. And then right in the center is a medallion, a circle of like silver leaf.
Yeah.
So like a silver foil in
yes.
circle shape. And then there's an impression. The paper is raised with an impression of a dragon.
Yeah, it looks great.
Very, very old style dragon that kind of starts in the foil center and kind of drifts off to the side, winding. And yeah, so it's super cool, very stylistic.
Enough chit chat about this sake. Let's pour it into the glass and begin talking about it. Okay, so we have the Ryusei Ryofu Nama in our glasses, and one thing I'm picking up on this when I look at it in up against my screen with a white background is that it is a little off-white, very slightly off-white.
It's just a little golden color to it.
Mm-hmm. Off-white, off-clear. It's not exactly clear. Yeah, go me. And let's take a sniff at the nose here. So the first thing that when I put this up to my nose, that acidity is like, I'm like, oh, you can practically smell it, right? But when you swirl it, I am getting some really interesting aromas too that are kind of mixing things up a little bit in an interesting way. Almost like a cotton candy almost. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of the tasting notes I read for this sake said that it has a hint of grapefruit.
Interesting. Interesting. And is that for aroma or flavor?
Yeah, for aroma.
Wow.
And if you think about like how grapefruit can have a little bit of that bitterness to it, I can see where that's coming from.
I don't know how much of this is the power of suggestion, but I think I get it.
You think you get it?
I really love the aroma on this. It's super fun. It's just a really nice, it's fruits that we don't usually get. I think the acidity makes it, the acidity that aroma, and it's weird to say like there's an aroma to acidity, but there is. And I think it's just making everything a little bit brighter on the nose. It's a really fun thing to take in.
It's interesting and it's different.
Yes.
Something unique to dig into. And I like the idea of like grapefruit, something with a little bit of subdued citrus and a little bit of bitterness and just really interesting aroma. It's interesting because it's not overtly one category. Like very often we smell a sake and it's like overtly fruity and there's very little discussion.
Yes, we know what to expect when we got that tropical fruit. It's like, oh, there's some pineapple, there's mango,
exactly.
whatever, cantaloupe. Not always, but often cantaloupe. But I think that recently, and I don't know if it has anything to do with a trend or if it's just what we've been choosing to taste on the show, but we've been getting some sakes recently that are fruity, but different fruit. And this is another example of that. It's like, it's still fruity, but it's different and interesting. And they're branching out and doing something unusual, which I like.
Yeah.
All right. You ready to have a sip?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do it. Well, this is interesting. Yeah. I want to preface by saying I really like this. It is definitely doing some different things. And I like what they're doing.
Most Nama sakes are not Kimoto usually.
Right.
And I'm feeling like this is an interesting marriage or mixture of traditional Nama flavors.
Yeah.
But it's also lower alcohol for a Nama. It's 15.5%. Namas are usually 17 or so. And it's got that Kimoto earthy vibe going on too. So it's a great mixture of some Nama elements and some Kimoto elements.
Yeah. And it's not one of those situations where they're clashing or fighting for dominance or anything like that. It's just it's really tasty, and these two things, the Nama elements and the Kimoto, are playing well together, in my opinion. And I don't, as you mentioned, we don't see a lot of sake like that. Same idea, you don't see a lot of like Nama Yamahai, right? It's very unusual. But this is really working for me.
For an unpasteurized Nama sake, it's pretty light-bodied because of that lower alcohol. And it's not exceptionally sweet either. It's feels like more dryness coming through.
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It is dry. It is on the dry side, I should say. It's not. I mean, this is a +6. I don't know if it's a +6 with an acidity of 2. So you would think it would be even more aggressively dry tasting. But I don't see. It's dry, but it's not like dry. It's not like bone dry. It's not karakuchi dry. At least not to me. What do you think?
No, it's not super dry. It's really interesting. It's light. It's light and dry. Like it's got a lightness to it. That's what keeps tripping me up.
It's light and also a Nama and a Kimoto, and light. I don't associate the word light with either of those things.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is real good. I'm really enjoying this. I had never had this particular one before. I don't know. Have you? This is a new one for you?
This is my first time.
All right. I like when we get to have new sakes on the show. This is fun. Yeah. So can you imagine yourself, under the tree with this, sipping away a little
bit? I sure can. I'm holding my cup out right now, hoping for the cherry blossom to fall in.
I don't think there's one in your apartment, sadly. No. Unless you've been holding out. I mean, you got a tree. That's just kind of over your setup.
Well, John, you know what we should do is that you and I both live in New York City, and we're tremendously privileged here to have some great cherry blossom orchards around town. There's one on the Upper West Side here. There's one at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden. You said you have one out in Queens. Is that right?
I do. Right over by the tennis stadium where they do the U.S. Open.
That's awesome. Maybe we should get some premium Evian and head to the cherry blossom and experience this as best we can in New York. The cherry blossoms have not bloomed yet in the city, so we are ahead of the curve.
Yeah, maybe that's the move. You think maybe we can get Scott and Michelle? They might enjoy this as well.
Absolutely.
We'll get some bentos. Like we can eat, right? We're allowed to eat in public, right? Okay,
absolutely. We can
in the park. I meant not, we're allowed to eat in the park because sometimes they have like restrictions. You're not allowed to have like food and stuff like that. But
yeah,
sounds good. I'm excited.
Yeah. So when I used to live at my previous apartment, which was also on the Upper West Side but down by 100th Street, there wasn't a grove or a collection of cherry trees, but there was one cherry tree on 99th Street I would always walk by on my way to the subway. And I would check it every day. And I kind of adopted it as my own local cherry tree.
All
And
right.
when it blossoms, it's just amazing. It takes over the whole block and you just have to stare at it because it's so beautiful. And it was my local cherry tree that was just closest to my apartment, and it was on the way to the subway. So I would always walk by it. And when the cherry blossoms start to come out this year, I always make a point to walk down to 99th Street and check it out, walk by, say hello to my former adopted cherry tree. There's no place to sit down and have an Evian or anything like that, but it's wonderful just to stop by, say hello, and see the beauty of these trees when they're in blossom. So I encourage everyone, if you're in a part of a country that has cherry trees, when they start to blossom for the Hanami season, for the Sakura season, please check them out, say hello, and it's a real thing of beauty and a great lesson from Japan to enjoy what we can and acknowledge the impermanence of beauty, right?
Yeah. That was very well said, Tim. Thank you.
All right. Good. Well, we hope that people will really enjoy cherry blossoms wherever they can see them. And of course, if you get the chance to go to Japan and experience them there, that is just the best and really, really special experience.
That's on the list. That's on the bucket list now. I must experience this at some point. Well, Tim, thank you very much for coming this week and educating me and all of our listeners at home on the wonders of Sakura viewing parties and Avion.
Yes. Poland Springs is also recommended.
Oh, okay. Oh, why'd you say so?
Well, John, great to taste with you. I look forward to our own Hanami viewing here in the city in a few weeks. And special hello and thank you to our patrons as well. We want to say thank you for supporting our show. If you're interested in joining our community on Patreon, all you have to do is visit patreon.com/sakerevolution to learn more about supporting our show.
Yeah, we've got a couple of tiers over at the Patreon site. You can find one that suits you. And while you're looking at different sites, you can also visit sakerevolution.com, where you will find some very, very interesting and detailed show notes. Tim, I hope you've got some photos from your viewing party that you went to. Can you also upload the 4K video, perhaps?
I sure will. You know I will.
All right. So that if that doesn't get you to go check out the show notes, I don't know what will. Actual footage of one of these events happening,
and the car,
I
experienced.
Is there a video of the car or just a photo?
No,
of the car?
just a photo.
Okay,
but I do have video of the blossoms in full bloom.
Excellent. That's going to be a lot of fun to take a look at. I haven't seen this video, so I'm ready for it.
All right.
So thanks again, everybody, for stopping by and listening. Now, it's my favorite part of the show where we all take our glass and we raise them up. Remember to keep drinking sake and kanpai.